Criminal activity exists in every modern-day society, though it is often disregarded. The publicity of the lawlessness is often nihil or minute if it took place in a poor or rural area, or if the crime was within a minority group. Many Americans also fail to take action to protect themselves from such atrocities because the crimes are not acknowledged enough, or they believe the same thing will not happen to them. While crime rates increase, Americans become more subject to ignore violence within certain groups of citizens, leading to a cycle of crime and social ostracism for many, with only a select few given media and attention and brought to justice.
What many people don't realize is the cycle of crime that occurs from a lack of attention and discussion about tragedies as a result of murder. Crimes such as these are ignored in neighborhoods of minority due to the racial prejudice that exists in these areas, which don't get efficiently addressed by the police. As evident in the book Ghettoside by Joe Leovi, the discussion of a homicide epidemic in South Los Angeles is expanded upon with the murder of 18-year-old African-American boy Bryant Teller. Leovi, through the perspective of a reporter, endeavors in the neglection of Black communities by police and how it causes a state of untrust, creating an increase in self-protection and street justice. There is a lack of empathy and attention given by society to those who suffer living in areas of high crime rates, and somehow mainstream America had managed to make a fetish of South Central murders yet still ignore them. The sensitivity in discussing American violence and topics such as these are shown through the people's actions of remaining quiet through the tragedies such as murder. If police were to address the various tragic events that occur, the cycle of crime would overall be reduced.
In addition to the neglect of urban populations that often leads to a cycle of crime, entirely removing certain groups from society also contributes to violence. The United States is an incredibly diverse country that encompasses many different ethnicities, religions, and political beliefs. Most of the time, citizens can live side by side and appreciate the commonalities and the differences they share with their neighbors. There are, however, some groups that are deemed too radical to be part of mainstream society, such as the members of the Fundamentalist Church of Latter-day Saints, discussed in detail in Jon Krakauer's Under the Banner of Heaven. Most members of this church grew up in the mainstream Church of Latter-day Saints, but began to become vocal about their beliefs in polygamy and were excommunicated. While this was a temporary solution to the problem, a very out-of-sight, out-of-mind approach, it led to violence on various levels. Those who had been excommunicated and their followers were pushed into desolate areas where they were not regulated by law and had no outside influence, causing them to become increasingly zealous and rather cult-like. It was here, within this environment, that Dan and Ron Lafferty became convinced that they were to kill their sister-in-law and baby niece simply because they did not have the same religious views. Surrounded only by others who had strong convictions about ridding the world of anyone outside their faith, they became increasingly focused on committing this awful crime and faced no opposition. Problems with large groups like the fundamentalists can be complex and exhausting, but pushing these people away until they are marginal groups, peculiar people, a people set apart from the world, does not solve any problem. It simply allows people to become angrier and to build a community fully against those who they believe are responsible for their problems, most notably politicians and law enforcement. The anti-government sentiments that then build are not unfounded, but lead to rebellion, murder, and abuse that could be avoided had the original issue been dealt with correctly.
While many felonies do not receive the appropriate attention, Michelle McNamara's I'll Be Gone in the Dark describes the crimes of California's Golden State Killer. Striking mostly in poorer, less urbanized areas, one would think that his felonies would not have been noted by the press. However, the rapist and murderer's actions were highly publicized, as his violent rapes and killings often made headlines throughout California. Residents of the state quickly became fearful as the local TV news blared with fresh hysteria every night, and took extra precautions to ensure their safety. The terrifying press prompted many citizens to stay awake all night and keep weapons close to them at all times. Due to the fervor surrounding the criminal, more effort was put into finding the culprit and preventing future offenses.
While some high-profile cases, such as that of the Golden State Killer, do get media attention, Capote's characterization of Holcomb as an insulated and perfect town exemplifies the idea of Americans' nature to disregard violence. While the residents did not intentionally ignore violence in the same way that law enforcement may today, their ignorance of crime in general effectively pushed the problem away without adequately addressing it. It was only through tragedy that they began to realize how life-altering crime could be, and how hard it would be to, quote, ever get back to normal living. Capote very purposefully exposed this ignorance is bliss mentality that existed in areas like Holcomb because of his personal experience with it during his childhood. He felt that small towns were full of unaccepting people who made climbing social ladders nearly impossible, ostracized those who were different, and valued an unwavering faith in the inherent safety of their situation, as quoted in the literary criticism. Capote exposing such a brutal crime in The Perfect Town demonstrated how crime cannot be avoided, no matter how much people try to isolate themselves from it or turn a blind eye to the facts. It made fools of individuals who make any attempt to dismiss crime, even Mr. Clutter himself, but simultaneously showed how deep-seated this habit is in the American population.
The increase of crime rates occurring in today's society deeply affects the lack of address given in social and federal forms. The overall absence of authorities in minority neighborhoods or groups result in the actions of self-justice. Numerous Americans doubt that the various crimes happening in their society will affect them, resulting in acts of ignorance towards the tragic issues. As the lack of address continues to rise, the cycle of crime does the same. The cycle of crime formed out of American violence leads to an increase in exclusion and outcasts of social groups from society, leaving them with an insufficient amount of attention that withdraws their justice.